strap yourself in for Keeping It Real with Jack and Rahl.
Okay, welcome back, keepers. This is Keeping It Real with Jack and Rahl. And Rahl, this episode is a beauty, like every episode, but it's episode number 40.
I know, number 40.
40.
We thought we'd run out of things to say after about 10.
We're just warming up, baby. Well, what's so good about 40?
Well, they say it's the best decade.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to disagree with that. I reckon 50 is.
Oh, how do you know?
I've just heard.
Why do they say
I've just heard.
40 is the best decade?
I don't know. They say you're happier, wiser. I guess maybe.
A bit established.
Yeah, a bit established.
I was bloody busy at 40.
Yeah, that's what I mean. No, 40, I was still, that's what I mean.
Lots going
40
on.
had still had kids. I reckon by the time you're 50, the kids.
Deep into the career.
Yeah. Yeah, I reckon 50's better.
Trying to stay sober. It wasn't easy. Well, there's a few people that have
Why
turned
were you
40.
trying to stay sober?
That's a good question.
During you were pregnant?
No, not at 40.
For 3 months during your pregnancy?
I actually managed to stay sober throughout all of my pregnancy. That's how I knew I was pregnant.
I've got a whole heap of nieces and nephews that are turning 40.
Oh, my
and that actually makes me feel
goodness.
old.
Oh,
that
that
actually
would.
does make me feel old.
That would. My eldest nephew has just turned 30 or 31.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. I've got some nieces and nephews who are like mid-40s.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
That's amazing. Yeah, but you're one of 500 kids, so
Yeah,
your mum and dad started early. All right.
Exactly.
Okay, toxic leadership or toxic leaders.
Yes.
Shall I give you not a fun fact? This is bloody sad.
That's a sad fact, yeah.
1 in 5 leaders are toxic.
And I bet you they don't know it.
1 in 5 leaders are toxic. And there was a survey done in 2023 in which 87% of professionals have had at least one toxic leader. Yeah. 87%.
That's nearly all.
And 30% of of professionals have had more than one toxic leader. Are you in the 87% or the 30%?
I reckon I'm in the 30%. I reckon I've only had one toxic.
No, you would have had more than one if you were in the 30%.
Yes, no, 87%. I think I've had one of.
You're lucky if you've only had one.
I avoided one, and I've seen quite a few when I go in and work with clients.
Bet.
Just when you were saying then a 1 in 5 leaders are toxic, and we'll talk about this. That I'm sure they don't realise it, but I was thinking if you're in a leadership team of 10 and you can't identify 2 toxic leaders, chances are you are one of them.
Well, that's a good stat. That's a very good stat. I'm in the 30%. I have had 2 toxic leaders that are really, that have been really toxic, that really come to mind. There's been others that have been poor leaders. And there's a lot of people who are not good leaders for various reasons. But that's amazing. 1 in 5 leaders are toxic. Okay, so there's a good chance our keepers that are listening to this today or watching us have reported to or are reporting to or, even worse, are one. When it comes
what's
to
a toxic leader?
Yeah.
What do you?
Okay, let me give you the definition. Toxic leadership is a type of leadership that is destructive to members of a team and the overall workplace. It's a selfish abuse of power on the part of the leader. Under toxic leadership, it's very difficult for you or your peers to thrive. A toxic leader will always have their own self-interest at heart.
Yeah.
So that's about a personal agenda. Yeah. That's about me.
Yeah. Not seeing leadership as a privilege is what it should be.
Yeah, that's a lovely, lovely explanation. Leadership is about helping others thrive and grow and succeed. And by doing that, you end up obviously getting the best outcome for all stakeholders and particularly organisations. So if you are a leader that only worries about yourself, everything you do, the way you behave, your actions, your vision, it's all about your own agenda, then there's a good chance no one's going to last under you.
And it's I would imagine it's a leader in title only because you're definitely not showing or displaying leadership.
Correct.
Yep.
So they say, Rahl, that there are 4 types of toxic leaders. Let me tell you what they are.
Do.
These are the ones that have been encountered most frequently. That's not to say that people don't have bosses with mental demons, but this is actually the 4 kinds of toxic leaders that are encountered most frequently. Number 1, the pathological narcissist.
Right.
This person is selfish and entitled and has grandiose fantasies and pursues power at all costs. That is the pathological narcissist.
World leaders or wannabe world leaders come to mind in that one.
One with a sore ear. Number 2, manic depressives. These people leave a trail of emotional blazes behind them. Woo. Number 3, passive aggressives.
Right, okay.
These people shy away from confrontation but are obstructive and underhanded.
Yes. Yeah, I reckon there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
I reckon there's a lot of them.
And the 4th most common toxic leader is called the emotionally disconnected. This person is very literally minded and they can't describe or even recognise their feelings, let alone anyone else's.
That is an interesting one.
Digger.
Because I think, I reckon that would be the most common almost.
Yeah.
Because they're not,
Yeah.
and I don't think they would think that's toxic. They
No,
would just think,
that's just the way I am.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Back to
Yeah,
personality
back
versus
to
character.
Previous episode. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. So I'll just run through those. Pathological narcissists, manic depressives, passive aggressives, and the emotionally disconnected. Those are the 4 most common types of toxic leaders. Yep.
Okay.
So you want to be able to figure out if you're working for one of those or if indeed you are one of those.
Yeah.
Because like everything, if you have a growth mindset and you're open to feedback, you can change.
Yeah. So you said you worked for a couple. What tell us those. And
Okay, one was a male.
Can you identify what they were?
Yeah, I can. One was a male in advertising and the other was a female in banking. Let's just leave it at that.
Yep.
Both very different people, didn't know each other, and these were at different stages of my career.
Okay.
Yep. And if I had to explain, what it was just the way they behaved so publicly and with such anger and hate, and it was just horrible. When I reflect back on it, and it was particularly horrible at the time because you start to question things like, well, hang on, well, that's just not right. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
You go through that wave of emotions as somebody under them. So the first one in advertising was definitely a pathological narcissist.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Very entitled, very successful,
Yep.
good looking,
Yeah.
had a whole lot of things that were just a recipe for me. I remember being in one meeting and I was actually someone this person liked, which, initially I thought, well, gee, that's lucky. I'm not going to be the one called out yet.
Yeah.
And somebody else who worked for them, who was more senior than me, who was the nicest person, who had stuck by this narcissist for years, they would be played up against me like, you need to be more like Jack. She does X. I wish you would be more like Jack when, this happens.
Okay.
And so publicly sort of, outing them.
So this
and
other
this
person starts to hate you.
Well, he never did. He was incredible. He was used to this guy. He really was, which made me wonder why he was there. But anyway, I think he was being paid a lot. So that was the first one. So he was definitely a pathological narcissist. And the second one, she was a doozy. She was a bit of a combo, actually. She was definitely emotionally disconnected. Mm-hmm. Definitely emotionally disconnected. She didn't recognise her own feelings, let alone anyone else. And she was definitely that passive aggressive. And I'd go to say she was also a pathological narcissist.
Yeah, okay.
And it was the public flagellation. She was a triple threat. The public flagellation of those who worked for her. She really got off on that. She enjoyed seeing people upset, embarrassed in front of others. Yeah. And I remember thinking that is just so wrong.
Yeah. Are they still that way? Do you know?
I've lost contact with both. Okay. Neither are in those industries or working in those roles. Yep. They've either become non-executive directors or just investors.
Okay.
Both had what I would say successful careers. Isn't that sad? In that they earned lots and lots of money and went to the top of their field, which says a lot about those around them who put them there.
Yeah. I worked for one and I would say she was the third one, passive-aggressive, I think. So would sort of think to your face, would sort of act like she was your friend. Ooh. And then you'd find out that you'd been undermined with everything. And it was like I just just did my head in.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was only for a very short time, and she actually retired, which was
right.
thank God, because, she just got out and she had like a second in charge, and the second in charge was really toxic as well.
I was just going to say, interesting. I was just thinking about, so there was the example I gave in the advertising where the person that was being played off against me never arced up and was actually a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. His leader was the toxic one. In the banking example, there were a whole range of people trying to demonstrate to this really toxic leader that they were like her.
Yeah.
And that, that's how a leader behaves, and as a result behaved appallingly. And I was on the end of a couple of that. One was an EA. It's like, excuse me, and would pick up the phone and just bark orders at me. This person wants X. And I'd hang up. I thought, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. You do not speak to somebody like that.
No.
Which, of course, was like a red flag to a bull. But anyway.
Yeah. We've got a mutual friend of ours I caught up with when I was in New York last year, I think, and she was telling me that she was on a family holiday.
Yes.
And her boss,
new boss
had come in and restructured and whatever, and said, I need to speak to you on her family holiday. Like, it was a 2-week family holiday. This was a few days in.
Bullshit.
And told her that she was being let go.
On a family holiday.
On a family holiday. Like, there's
For 2
nothing.
weeks.
Yeah. So she just said it just ruined her family holiday to the point where she came back because and she said, we just decided to come back and do it another time because it completely ruined the family holiday. And she'd also told me what made it like really hard to take is that a few months previously she had a contractor working for her, and after about 3 months or 6 months, whatever it was, she had to let the contractor go. She looked after Asia Pacific. She flew. She said, I got on a plane and flew for 8 hours to tell him that news face to face.
To do the right thing.
And she's been just called on
during
a family holiday.
Yeah. So there's her character, right, coming through.
Yeah.
And then you start to question, hang on, am I happy in this situation?
Yeah.
Am I happy in this role? And this new leader that's coming, if that's their character and that's how they behave, then this isn't going to be a good thing.
No.
If you're on a family holiday –
yep.
and your new leader that came in calls you and says, we're letting you go, how would you react?
Well, I think I would react like she has reacted. I was like, it would. I think you'd be, first of all, you'd be
Shocked.
disappointed about the news. You would be shocked by the way it was done. Like, what is she going to do? What's it going to matter?
Yeah.
Just to wait a week?
Nothing. But she can't control that, right? So the only thing she can control is how she responds to it. Wouldn't it be awesome? And I'm not saying I would either, and you've just been honest and said you would have reacted the same way. But to have that ability to rise above it, okay.
Yeah, I don't think I would have cancelled I'm going to
enjoy this holiday like I can't imagine, and I'm going to actually spend the time with the kids. I don't have any worries at all now.
Yep.
In fact, I'm not going to think another thing about that job or that organisation. I'm going to take this time. I mean, the ability to be able to do that, and I don't know many that could, but if you could rise above it, you have actually, I think, won against the toxic leader. Because your own self-preservation has been within your control, and you're now ready to go and get prepared for whatever comes next.
Yeah. So I agree. I think I would have stayed.
On holiday, yeah. But her response was so visceral because her character is so the opposite.
Yeah. And okay, so what about if we spend some time talking about how you could possibly identify that you are a toxic leader? Because I think those 4 types – I think most people think a toxic leader is the narcissist that you spoke about, but they're probably not thinking – oh, maybe I don't have very high, passive-aggressive or maybe
emotionally
not
distant.
Exactly. So so how you would identify that, and then let's get stuck into, well, what do you do if you actually work for one?
Could we be that toxic leader? I think nearly all the keepers that listen into us are leaders. They've got people reporting to them. So how do I know if I'm a toxic leader? And don't assume just because you've got lots of friends and lots of people kowtowing to you that you're not a toxic leader. What did you say on one of those earlier episodes of self-delusion with success? You didn't get any funnier, you just got more senior. I mean, that's just such a great line. So what I would do is get feedback straight away. But it needs to be a pointed feedback survey. So 2 things here. If you think you may be a toxic leader or you want to confirm you're not, You would actually go to people that aren't going to tell you what you want to hear. So don't go to your direct reports actually.
Right, okay.
Go to peers, go to your leader, or go to a supplier or somebody who you feel has the confidence to be honest. And you ask 2 questions. And they're lovely questions. The first question should be, when you see me leading at my best, what do I do? Can you give me some examples?
Okay.
And then the next question, and the most important question, when you see me leading at my worst, what do I do?
Yeah.
And give me some examples.
They're good questions.
Because we all have days where we don't lead well.
Yeah.
And from that, you should be able to see what the gap is.
Yeah.
But you need to ask people that will be honest with you.
I was also thinking too, if you look at those 4 types, if you said, if you were one of them, what would be the most likely one you would be?
Okay, so ask yourself
Ask
that.
yourself.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Which one would you be?
I think the most likely one I'd be is passive aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the most
The
common.
most likely I would be.
I think I'd be emotionally distant,
Right.
sort of shut down a bit, and being aware of that is
Yeah.
so important, right?
Yeah.
So get feedback. Find out what
Keehlan would be a narcissist.
Keelan's a puppy. How can you say that? He's so sweet.
Joking.
He's listening to this thinking, yeah, these two and their toxic leadership, all right, hey? That's too funny. Okay, so get feedback and don't assume you're not a toxic leader. That's where I would start. Ask 2 questions.
Because if 1 in 5 are,
well, that's it. There's a good chance.
20% chance you are one.
Correct. Yeah. I like that math. Well done.
know, that's
So
very good.
2 questions you'd ask yourself, or not ask yourself, you'd ask others about yourself, but not people that are likely to not give you the truth. When I'm leading at my best, what do I do? Give me some examples, please. And when I'm leading at my worst, and do assume you have days where you lead at your worst, because you will. You're a human being.
What about, you said before, don't ask the people that report to you because they might not tell you the truth. What if you ask the team, like you say you manage a team, and you ask the team, but ask them to come back as a collective
With
so it was
feedback.
sort of about when you see me at my best and at worst. That could be.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Again, I think there is a greater chance of people still not speaking up.
Yeah, okay.
So the alternative to that is to get an external person to collect that feedback and aggregate it so that there is no way that it could be ever written in such a way or fed back in such a way it was obvious, oh, that's Dolly over in accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a good point. And honestly, who knows you best or who has to work with you the most? The people that report to you. So if you don't want to leave them out and with good reason, then that's what you would do.
Yeah, okay,
And
cool.
so this is also the power when it comes to toxic leadership, and we'll get into it a bit more as we go through tips and techniques if you're working under a toxic leader, is to be able to have somebody external. Now, you've walked into organisations to do workshops or
God.
dealt with leaders that have wanted everyone else to be developed, when in actual fact we know who needed the development.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of workshops I've done, and, the leader, the CEO or the senior exec of that group, they're toxic. They would have no idea they're toxic.
Wow.
And you can see it on everyone else's face. I had once years and years ago, and she was the CEO. It was the most toxic environment I've ever walked into. Not only toxic to her team, but like even to me, aggressive to me.
Wow, and here you are, a supplier, somebody coming in to help.
Yeah. At one stage, we were doing a storytelling workshop, and halfway through, she just said, "This is a waste of time. You haven't shown me one reason why this works."
I love that. See, so those words, you haven't shown me.
Yeah.
In other words, I'll take no responsibility for what I need to ask to learn more or what I need to do to have a conversation with you to change that. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Well, that is a narcissist.
So I actually surprised myself because I did say, well, I think I've provided lots of examples of
You're dumb, love.
storytelling at work. Yes. And I said, but the reality is, if this is a waste of your time, then you shouldn't be here. And you could tell half her team were bloody sick, kiss asses to her. And they were toxic as well, but they were trying to be like her.
Yes.
And I said, the same goes with everyone. I go, you're the senior leaders. If this is a waste of your time, you probably shouldn't want to be here. And then there was morning tea, and you know what? She came back and she just But she got nothing out of it. I got to the point where I was going to actually write to the board. But it's one of those things. I know I should have. This was probably about 15 years ago.
This behaviour happens because nobody calls it out.
Yeah, I should have.
Nobody calls it out. And I sit on boards, and the messages I get from the CEO and the executive team are glowing. Everyone's so happy here until you do a culture survey or, whatever it might be. You've got to dig deeper. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Where is that person today? Do you know?
I got no idea.
No idea. Do a Google.
It was, yeah.
That's one of the things that narcissist, toxic leader I was talking to you about in banking. Whenever I ever run into anyone from the bank, and I was there a long time, 10 years, they'll often say, you never forget these people, right?
No.
They'll often say, I wonder whatever happened to, or did you hear?
Yeah.
Because they were so shocking.
Yeah.
They are still actually front of mind.
Yeah.
And you can learn a lot from toxic leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's turn this into a positive.
Yeah.
How not to behave.
Yeah, exactly.
How to recognise. Okay, so what do you do?
Let's get into it. Let's get into if you're actually working for one, what do you do?
All right. Well, first of all, document the behaviour. Yeah, it's really important.
I should say we have a 7-step approach.
Yeah, well, we do have a 7-step approach. In fact, I think it's a 6-step approach.
6-step approach.
Yeah, exactly right, like Alcoholics Anonymous, but this is a 6-step approach to actually how you handle or manage a toxic leader.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is going to require some confidence, people.
I've actually got a 7-step approach. I'll add the 7th one right at the
that'll
end
be a good
as a
one.
surprise.
All right, like a surprise, like a little Kinder surprise.
Yeah.
All right, first of all, document the behaviour. Make sure that you are aware of what is happening, when it's happening, who's impacted and affected. Write that down, yeah?
Yeah.
That's a really, really important one. The other...
Because the first thing you do is they'll say, give me examples.
Exactly right. Or I did not do that. Or that was not the case.
Yep.
So if you have facts, then that helps a lot.
So do that first.
Obviously, read the room. Are others also experiencing this same toxic leadership? Do you feel that you might have some allies who also can see the challenges? Talk to them one-to-one. Explain that you want to actually call this behaviour out and give the toxic leader every opportunity to be more self-aware and hopefully change. Would they support some of the things that you've seen? Yep. Now, not everyone will say yes to that. They might say, yes, I'd support it as far as I agree with those examples, or you can say, yes, 2 or 3 of us have seen that, but don't use my name.
Yeah.
That's okay. You need allies. Just understand, because again, it might just be you. You might be taking things too personally, as the person reporting up. Or so what you want to do is validate. Is it just me, or is others noticing it? Ask them to be an ally. Then you've got to think about the toughest thing at all. We need to actually raise this with the toxic leader. So you prepare for that. Use a coach if you can. Have a conversation. Do
That's
a rehearsal.
tough. Have you coached people on how to do that?
Yes.
Has it worked?
I do it every week.
Does it work?
It does work.
Okay.
It does work. It can sometimes backfire. When I say it can sometimes backfire, you could be working for a toxic leader that just says, that's bullshit, I disagree, not going to change, and expect them to either get rid of you quickly or you should leave. Yeah. That is the risk we take. But let's face it, what's the risk if you don't do it?
Yeah.
No change. And your own self-confidence and self-esteem and the culture of the organisation going down. So definitely rehearse, prepare, have your facts. But how you approach that feedback session, Rael, is so, so critical, yeah? So you're the toxic leader. I'm the sweet, awesome direct report. So role-playing here. Bit of method acting. And I say to you, Rael, there's been some examples of behaviour that has really had an impact on me, and I worry that it may have an impact on others in the organisation. Can I share that with you?
Yeah.
One-to-one, confidentially.
So I either respond positively to that.
So you will either say, yes, I'd like to hear that, or you'd say, out of my office.
Yeah, don't give a shit what you think.
Don't agree what you think.
Yeah.
That's right.
But in your experience, when you've coached people, did most of them take it positively?
They did. Most did.
Oh, okay.
Because how we set this up, so our intention for giving the feedback is what? It is actually to let you know so that you can be better.
Yeah.
So say that. The reason I'm sharing this feedback with you is because I think you can be a great leader. I think you could be a better leader. I think our organisation would be better off.
Yeah, okay.
So that's coming from a really good place.
Yeah.
Very hard to disagree with that or get angry with that. People still could. But know yourself, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
set the intention and then give the examples and then ask them, were they aware of it?
Yeah.
That gives them the out. Even if they are aware of it, they could say, no, I had no idea I did that. Thank you for sharing that with me. So in most cases, it works well.
Okay. So if in most cases positive, we can stop there
Correct.
at step 4.
That's exactly right.
If it doesn't fix anything, what would be the 5th step?
If they start yelling at you, if they start judging or defending themselves and judging you, because people can turn it back on you, a narcissist particularly. It's all about you, not them now, because you're the person in the wrong. Then you've got a choice.
Yeah.
You can either make the call and finish up, or you could take it further.
Okay, yeah.
Now, there's a few things to do there, but usually you start with who do they report to? Who's responsible for that person? Is it a chairman?
Yeah.
You know, is it if it's an MD, is it a CEO? Whoever is above them. And that's a very good thing to do if they've decided that the problem is you, not them.
Yep.
I would always flag it with somebody else, because there's a good chance this could turn litigious, or they could sack you unfairly. So if you've already spoken to somebody else about the behaviour and the fact that you've raised it, then that could be useful to you.
Yep. Okay.
Either way, it's not a fun situation, but this is all sport, people, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Work is a transaction. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah, true.
It's a transaction. True. I want to talk about that in another episode. Too many of us take work way too personally.
Yep. Okay. All right, I'm going to recap those 6 steps and then give my secret
the
number
Kinder
7.
surprise.
Right. Number 1, document the behaviour.
Correct.
So you've got it all written down.
Correct.
2, ask others if they see the same thing, because that might, if they go, no, like it could just be you.
Could be you.
3, if they do see it, ask them to be allies and will they support you? Because I'd imagine if you went to them for feedback and saying it's the team.
Brilliant.
The 4th is absolutely prepare for that feedback, to give them the feedback.
Correct.
If it all goes well, great.
Yeah.
Well done, tick. If it doesn't, think about going above their head.
Correct.
And could you do that? And then finally, if there's nothing else works, it's time to move on. So that's number 6. And the little secret number 7 one is you could send them this podcast.
Just saying. Love it.
You could send them this
Love
podcast.
it. Well, it's not a bad point. You could actually send this podcast to the team, or you could send the podcast to a group of people, not calling anyone out, saying, hey, I think this is actually some really good learning.
Yeah.
Good point.
Good point.
Great call.
All right. We hope this has been of value. We hope, and for those of you that are in that situation of toxic leadership, then we hope it's been of value. And, of course, if you do need a coach, Jack's the best in the business.
Thank you.
As usual, give us a rating, share it. Definitely share this one.
Pathological narcissist here has to be all about us.
But we will speak to you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.
You've been listening to another episode of Keeping It Real with Jack and Rahl. If you like what you've heard, don't forget to tell others about it and give a 5-star review. They may seem confident, but they really are sensitive 5-star needy souls. Yeah, right. Keeping It Real, created by Jack Phillips and Gabriel Dolan. Produced by Keehlan Ferrari-Brown. And this really real voiceover, spoken by Richard Phillips.